Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. There's no underselling how huge Omega Force's Warriors franchise has become over the years. And when I say huge, I'm talking just how many entries the series has. Following their first entry into the hack-and-slash formula in the year 2000, the series has grown to have over 70 different entries, spanning familiar franchises such as Fire Emblem, Persona, Gundam, and One Piece. However, when the series first began with Dynasty Warriors, it focused on the story of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a more fictionalized depiction of the Three Kingdoms era of Chinese history. In these games, you would play as famous warriors and figures from the era, laying waste to massive amounts of enemies. Each entry would add new famous figures and expand on the story as it went along. After the release of Dynasty Warriors 4, Omega Force looked to expand their horizons and go beyond just the story of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, leading to the creation of Dynasty Warriors' first spin-off series, Samurai Warriors. Instead of China, Samurai Warriors would take a look at Japanese history, specifically the Sengoku period of Japan. As the years went on, Samurai Warriors would come to rival Dynasty Warriors in popularity, and has grown to be one of my all-time favorite video game franchises. However, before this video, I had barely touched the first entry in the series, instead starting with Samurai Warriors 2, and really only playing later entries in the franchise. So I'll admit, I was interested to go back to this first game and see the humble beginnings of the Samurai Warriors series. How does the game hold up today? Let's turn the page and find out. As mentioned, Samurai Warriors is a hack-and-slash game released in 2004 for the Xbox and PlayStation 2. As is the case with most Warriors games, the goal is to defeat the enemy army while racking up as many KOs as you can. The game features 15 playable characters based on the figures of the Sengoku era, such as the brutal Nobunaga Oda, the famous traitor Mitsuhide Akechi, the ninja Hanzo Hattori, and the legendary warrior Yukimura Sanada. When you start, only 5 of these characters are selectable, but as you play through each character's story mode, you'll slowly unlock more characters to sink your teeth into. Each playable character has their own story mode, which takes you through 5 stages based around real historical battles the characters fought in. The individual stories are all great. Though they are short, you can beat each one in under 2 hours, the game tells some really compelling narratives on the bleakness of the Sengoku period. In the Dynasty Warriors games, they focused much more on the individual factions who were fighting one another, which led to many characters taking a major backseat to others and not being fleshed out as much. Samurai Warriors decides to have more character-focused stories, making each character feel just as significant as the other, and allowing the player to really get to know who these people are and what they are fighting for. I think my personal favorite character was Magoichi Saika. His introductory cutscene shows him as a wannabe womanizer who doesn't seem to take the ongoing war all too seriously. However, after watching the brutal methods of Nobunaga, Magoichi becomes much more determined, seeking to strike down Nobunaga and bring peace to Japan. He's a dynamic character who is fun and makes jokes, but knows when it's time to put those jokes aside and do what's right. It was honestly really compelling to see his growth. Something really cool that is unique to only this entry of Samurai Warriors is that each character's story actually has 2 different endings. At various points in the story, there are certain objectives that can cause the story to separate into 2 paths, depending on whether or not you complete or fail the objective. For example, during the incident at Honnoji during Mitsuhide's story, you'll have the objective to strike down Nobunaga. If you manage to kill Nobunaga, then you'll continue on to Mitsuhide's true ending. However, if Nobunaga manages to escape, then you'll have 2 different stages that you'll be able to play through, with a completely different ending once you complete them. You can usually tell which ending is the true ending of each character, as one ending will use the in-game models, while the other will use that really expensive looking CG. Still, these branching pathways add a lot of replayability to each character's story, and it's a very welcome addition. Now, it should be noted that for those wanting these stories to be 100% accurate to history, temper your expectations. The game does have moments where characters fight in battles they shouldn't have been around for, and relationships they didn't have otherwise. However, I don't mind this at all, as all the changes were done for the purpose of creating a stronger narrative for each of the characters. For example, in Samurai Warriors, Mitsuhide and Ranmaru are shown to have both served under the feudal lord Dosen Saito before joining Nobunaga as part of the Oda clan. From my understanding, historically, Ranmaru was always part of the Oda clan, and shouldn't have been serving under Saito with Mitsuhide. However, this change was to show that Mitsuhide and Ranmaru have an existing relationship and have known each other for a while, which makes their final conflict between each other in their individual stories much more impactful than they would have been otherwise. So even though it didn't actually happen in history, for the sake of creating a stronger narrative, I'm actually glad that these changes were included. The gameplay of Samurai Warriors is pretty straightforward. First, you pick your warrior. Each warrior has a unique moveset from each other, complemented by the fact that each character has a different weapon. There are swords, war fans, muskets, a kurosagama, a ball in a cup? Yeah, sure! The variety of movesets and fighting styles makes each character really stand out, and encourages trying them all to find what clicks with you. For this visit, I mostly played as Yukimura, Hanzo, Magoichi, and Mitsuhide, all of which were really fun to play. I also liked each character's individual designs. Not one looked too similar to the other. I especially liked the look of Shingen Takeda, with his red mask and white-haired headpiece. The cast is impressively varied, giving us character designs of different body types, ages, and outfits of the period. Anyways, once you select your warrior, you then pick your stage. As you play the stage, you'll be given various objectives throughout the map, most of the time being enemies you need to defeat, while taking out as many mooks as you can along the way. You have light and strong attacks that you can string together for some powerful moves. As you defeat enemies, the bar in the bottom left corner will start to fill up, and once it's full, you can use a Muso attack, invincible super moves that can clear away large groups of enemies. The common enemies don't put up too much of a fight. However, as you continue throughout the stage, you'll encounter other enemy officers that are much stronger, especially if that officer happens to be another playable character, and this is where you'll find most of the challenge in the various fights. Seems simple enough, right? Well, the main spice of Samurai Warriors' gameplay is its morale system. When you start the stage, you'll be shown the level's victory and defeat conditions. Having the defeat conditions met, or you yourself losing all your HP, will cause a game over. So long as these don't happen, you won't get a game over, even if you fail one of the other objectives the game gives you. For example, you may sometimes be tasked with defeating an enemy officer before they reach a certain location. Failing to stop them will fail the objective, but you won't get a game over. What will happen is that your army will lose morale, while the enemy will gain morale. Morale is what will decide how capable your allies will be. Having a lot of morale will make your allies much stronger, and make them less likely to be defeated by other enemy officers. Having low morale, on the other hand, will make it much easier for your allies to be defeated, which you don't want to happen. As many game over conditions are caused by losing your main camp, or having an allied commander fall in battle, the less allies you have, the less defenses you have, and with how much can go on in a given battle, it can become easy to be overwhelmed and be incapable of preventing the fall of your main camp. I think this is a really great mechanic. Completing a lot of objectives early in the map can give the player a lot of momentum and making finishing the stage pretty smooth sailing. However, if you're unable to finish an objective, you won't need to restart the entire stage. The stage will become more difficult because of that failure, but it still allows the players to push through and succeed if they have the skill. Samurai Warriors also has some RPG mechanics, as finishing a stage will net you experience, which will allow your characters to level up. This in turn gives you additional attacks and increases your stats like health, attack, defense, and speed. It also gives you skill points, which you can use to buy skills to power up your character even further. I should note that the gameplay of Samurai Warriors is very repetitive. No matter which game mode you choose to play, going around and beating up enemies with the same moves makes up the bulk of what you will be doing in this game. Personally, I've never minded the repetitiveness of Samurai Warriors games. The gameplay of this series has always been both fun and relaxing to me, and I can usually play these games for hours on end without getting bored. That doesn't mean I can't see how repetitive these games are, however, and while the multiple unique characters to play around with does mitigate this issue, I won't pretend that this game will be able to keep everyone's attention anywhere near as long as it does for me. There are a couple of issues I have that took away some enjoyment of the game. First, for how large the maps are in Samurai Warriors, each character starts off painfully slow. Getting from one side of the map to another can take a long time, navigating across barren landscapes at a crawl, which was really tedious. You do get horses that you can ride for your character, which do have better speed, but honestly it didn't really improve things very much. I understand that you increase your speed as you level up, But the fact is that no point did I ever feel like I was moving at a comfortable pace during my story mode playthroughs, even as I got to the final stages and had leveled up a fair bit. My other grievance is that while the map is really helpful at showing you different paths to take to navigate through the stage, the maps don't have any icons to indicate when said paths are blocked off. There were far too many times where I saw an objective and planned my route on how I was going to reach it, only to realize halfway through that the door to continue the path was sealed shut. And because the characters start off so slow, by the time I had reached the closed door and needed to plan a different route, there was not going to be enough time to reach the objective before it failed. A little red X or something over the blocked paths would have saved me a ton of frustration, and while this problem would be fixed in future entries, here it's absolute misery. Samurai Warriors has a healthy selection of modes for the player to engage with, each varying a bit in quality. You of course have story mode, which we've already discussed, but there's also free mode, where you can select a stage you've already beaten from a character's story, but now you can play through them with any character you've unlocked. This mode is well appreciated, as it can let you play through challenges that other characters may not have gotten to go through otherwise in their own story mode. A mode I didn't enjoy, however, is Create an Officer. In this game, you can make your own warrior and train them up. Once you do, they become a playable character and even get their own story mode. A cool idea on paper. But the customization features are almost non-existent, as the game only allows you to choose from a handful of pre-made models, and then you name them. That's it. Very disappointing. In this mode, to level up your character, you play these mini-games, I'll call them, which can consist of doing laps around a stage while riding a horse, defeating as many enemies as you can, etc. I didn't find any of these challenges fun, and it got way too repetitive way too quickly, that even I didn't want to continue it after just a few rounds. These challenges aren't bad, but they're too short or too simple to really be all that entertaining. This mode can be a good tutorial for someone, as each challenge just focuses on a particular aspect of the gameplay, but the game doesn't tell you that this is a tutorial, and so you're unlikely to play this mode first. A cool idea with a lame execution. Challenge mode is just the mini-games from Create a Warrior, but you can play as any of the other playable characters. Obviously I didn't really care for this mode since I already didn't enjoy them in Create an Officer, but if you did get a kick out of them with the Create an Officer, well, here it is for the rest of the cast. The last mode available is Survival mode, which comes in one of two flavors, Abyss and Tower. In Abyss mode, you have 60 minutes to make your way down a series of floors where a special opponent is said to wait. You gain additional time by completing challenges and fighting enemies. Tower mode, however, has no end, and gives the player 20 minutes to make it up as many floors, and just like Abyss mode, you gain additional time by completing various challenges and defeating a certain amount of enemies. I found these modes to be fun challenges, each offering good variety outside what is offered in story mode and free mode. They're also a good way to test how strong your characters become. Naturally, the higher level your character is, the easier it will become to navigate these floors, so each revisit will allow you to get higher scores as you level up your characters in other modes, giving you a good sense of progression. I think if I had any complaints, is that you don't earn any experience while playing these modes. It's disappointing, especially with Abyss mode, that you could potentially be playing this mode for over an hour and gain absolutely nothing besides potentially beating a high score. So yeah, a mixed bag of game modes, but each one does offer something different and can be a good distraction while adding replayability to the game. Moving on to presentation, visually the game looks okay. The character models look good and have a decent amount of detail on them, but the stages themselves are pretty uninteresting. I understand why this is the case, as in order to have as many enemies on screen as this game does, something had to give. And the amount of enemies on screen was impressive for the time, I won't take that away from this game, but that translates into stages with really flat terrain, wide open spaces of nothing, and a lack of any notable set pieces. The other issue with the game's presentation is its color palette. The game has a very serious tone, and this tone bled over into the game's color. The game, especially noticeable in the stages, used a lot of grays and browns, making everything look pretty bland. Personally, I think the game could have used a bit brighter colors to make certain things pop a bit more. One thing presentation-wise that I had absolutely no issue with was the game's music. The OST consists of a lot of electronic tracks with a great beat to them, which you wouldn't think would work for the kind of tone this game is going for, but it absolutely does. I can't think of a single track that didn't have me bobbing my head to the beat. They're all really great and a major highlight of this game. So yeah, that was Samurai Warriors. It was really fun going back and viewing the humble beginnings of one of my favorite game series for the first time. In a lot of ways, it impressed me. There's a really strong selection of characters, each with a pretty good story accompanying them. I was also impressed by the amount of game modes on display. Sure, not all of them clicked with me, but they add replayability, and I can appreciate that. That being said, this game has definitely shown its age in a lot of places. The game's visuals and environments don't hold up very well, and those frustrations with the map and movement speed really brought down the experience. And so, bearing all that in mind, I've decided that Samurai Warriors will take the number 9 spot in my ranking. I enjoyed the game, don't get me wrong, but I really don't see myself coming back to replay this game in the near future. I'm still glad I got to experience it though. So what awaits us in the next chapter? Well, this time we'll be taking a look at a LEGO game, though not a game in the typical LEGO formula. Please look forward to that. In the meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and may we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.